Okay, thank you. We're going to make a start.
Yes, welcome everyone. We're here, finally. Welcome to everyone in the Polar Room, but also in the Mission Overflow Room. We will not forget you there, even though you're not in the Polar Room with us. Welcome. I think we had a great evening last night, talking a bit about with each other, and we have lots of time for that today. But I think for now we really need to get started with the speakers and the whole plan.
So, just to introduce ourselves, my name is Hans.
I'm Sarah.
And we are your masters of ceremonies, which will mean, so we're the timekeepers. We tell you who's coming on stage and who's going off stage, and if you're late, we'll drag you off stage. So that's our role.
Yeah, and how will we keep the time? Well, first of all, the speakers will see their time here, like how much time they have left. And when they have 3 minutes left, we have a beautiful paper. Hans, can you show them? With 3 minutes.
Which one?
Yeah, we have a lot of attributes for this session. It's
yes.
A bit confusing for us as well.
3 minutes.
So, the speakers know 3 minutes left. And then after those 3 minutes, we turn it around. Stop. Basta. It is over. Okay. Hopefully we will not have to actually drag the people off stage, but you know, we do what's needed.
I spoke to some of the speakers already. They're well trained.
Yeah, I believe so. Very sure.
Okay. You all have the app, you know, the WUVA app. Yes, you've seen it. So we're not going to go into details about who's coming to speak because you can find that in the app. Their bios are in there. So we just do the introducing and the exits.
We have a quiet room if you need some time to recover or just some quiet time for yourself. It's in the Osram room, somewhere over here. Like we said, there's a lot of information in the app. However, if you still have a question, Hans, where do they go?
The registration desk.
Very important, people.
So apart from the app, the answer to all your questions is at the registration desk.
And we really want you to remember this. So we need to practice this. I say registration, you say desk. Right? Okay, 3, 2, 1. Registration. Yes. Registration. Yes. Registration. Yes. All right.
I think they got it.
I think they got it.
So, sorry? Registration? Could we now invite our speakers to come on stage? Today we are starting off with a session that asks us to be mindful of why we are doing what we do in the field of mental health, substance use, and disability. The topic is inclusion, leadership, and lived experience. We hope you will be as inspired as we are by these wonderful presenters.
So welcome to stage Hanna Verboom, Sandra Esmeijer, and Clenton Farquharson. A big applause. Good luck.
I get to go. Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Hanna Verboom, and it's a privilege to share a little bit of my story on this stage. I grew up in Africa. I lived there until I was 12 years old, and I moved back when I was 12, and from quite a young age, I had a bit of a feeling that I was a bit different than other people. And when I was about 16, I mean, look at that computer. Can you imagine? I feel very old now. When I was about 16, I started to have to deal with severe depressions. I remember I was laying in my bed and my mom was holding my hand and I couldn't get out of bed, and it was like this really dark blanket was laying on top of me, so heavy that I couldn't even speak. And it would take a few days, 4 or 5 days, and then out of nowhere the lights would go on. Energy would stream through my veins, and I would be able to get up and live my life again. I didn't know what it was. I mean, my parents had no idea as well. But we just dealt with it, and as time passed, I started acting. I was about 19. when I was in America to promote a film that I had made. And I was going through all these different time zones, traveling around the world. And while I was in Los Angeles, I had my first psychosis. It happened in the middle of the night. It actually took for a few days. I mean, a lot of you know how this evolves. But basically, I woke up in Cedars-Sinai at the closed ward. And I had lost everything. I had lost my sanity. I had hallucinated. And when I came back, I had to deal with these things. They didn't give me any proper help because they thought I had had drugs in my drink. And that following year was very tough. And exactly a year later, I had my second psychosis attack. And at that moment, they took me to a mental ward in Delft, here in Holland, for 1.5 months, and I got a diagnosis bipolar disorder. And at that moment, my life collapsed. I remember I was Googling bipolar, and I read the most horrible things. I read things about you're not able to cure bipolar. I read that it's for life. I read about the high percentage of people that commit suicide. And I was 20, 21, and I thought my life was over. My manager at the time said, don't ever talk about this, because you'll never be able to book a film again. So that's what I did. Swimming in dark waters, that's how it feels. You don't have any grip, you don't know when it's going to be day or when it's what's day, what's night. You can't feel any foundation. It's the most scariest thing that I've ever experienced. Perhaps it's worse than, well, no, I can't compare, but it's really one of the most scary things that I've experienced. But this is what my life was, so ups and downs, and basically I had a few friends and of course my family, and I'm lucky to have a great family, so they helped me through it, but I would never talk about it in public. I would never, tell anybody, and I was just doing it on my own, basically. And I remember my self-security, my self-assurance was just absolutely shattered. Because if you can't trust what's happening here, how can you ever develop any self-assurance? And it's so difficult to build a life upon that. Now, fast forward about 3 or 4 years later, I had started a film company, Cinetree, and I was basically telling everybody, it's so important to share your story. But I wasn't sharing my own story. And I was confronted with that fact, and I decided, okay, I need to share this story. I need to make a documentary about what happened to me. Because even though everybody had told me to be silent about it, even though I felt this extreme stigma, I knew that there was a different narrative, there was a different part to that story as well. And I met Dirk de Wachter, a Flemish psychiatrist. Who knows him, Dirk de Wachter? Yes, he's amazing. If you don't know him, read his books. He's an amazing person. And we made the documentary together. And Dirk de Wachter actually told me that it's okay to deal with these extreme emotions, that we are to embrace unhappiness, that it's actually part of life. And he didn't say, I have a disorder. He said, I have a mental variation. And for me, this was homecoming. Because even though I've dealt with a lot of things at a young age, and even though it's definitely brought my life in disorder, there's nothing disorderly about me. I'm okay. And using that word, mental variation, or using that phrase actually struck a chord with me, because I realized, okay, there's a lot of different people. There's a lot of variations. My variation works in a way that sometimes I have 120, 130% to give, to live, and sometimes I have 50 or 40%, and I need to rest. That's my mental variation. And when we made the documentary, it was the scariest thing I've ever done. I remember calling the newspaper, like, let's not do the interview. I don't want anybody to see this documentary, because I was so scared what people would think. But the next morning, I got thousands and thousands and thousands of emails in my email box and my Instagram. So many people telling me their story and thanking me for being open, and everybody was saying, me too, me too, me too, me too. Thousands and thousands. So it's normal not to be normal. And for the first time in my life, I realized that it's not about me, that it's actually okay not to be normal. And you know what? 48% of Holland is dealing with mental suffering. 48%. So it's very normal not to be normal. And I guess we could say, well, it's not just a mental health crisis, but it's also a connection crisis. Because people are alone. One of the biggest things that people have to deal with when they're dealing with mental health is loneliness. And it's also one of the biggest causes, I think. So we made a second documentary, this time with my brother, Judah, who's 25 and who had the same diagnosis. And we traveled through Holland, talking to all these different experts by experience and experts, really with the question, what is mental suffering? And how do we deal with this? And how can we possibly even change the narrative? People need people. That's what we learned. We spoke to so many people who all said, established or all agreed with this. And that was kind of the essence of the documentary. We gain trauma in relationships with other people, bad relationships often. But we heal in relationships with other people. And if we look at the health system right now in Holland, it's 1 to 3. 1 expert and 3 patients. So 3 patients, 1 expert needed for 3 patients, 1 to 3. If you're dealing with suicidal thoughts right now, you often need to wait for like 7 or 8 months. So how can we change the system? How can we make sure that there's enough people to be there for the people that are suffering right now? It was a message that Holland needed to hear because we were invited at all these different talk shows, and Judah had the time of his life, although often he was like, Hanna, why did we do this? I don't want to go on national TV. But he did great. And we said, okay, we have a mission. There's 2 things. We need to break the taboo. We need to normalize neurodiversity, because if 48% of Holland is dealing with this, it's actually very normal. And we need to change the system. We need to go from a system that wants to fix people, or maybe a society that wants to fix people, to a more human approach. What's your story? What's the context? What happened in your past that brought you here? And how can you heal? We went to schools. We spoke to young people, lots of young people. We went to companies trying to kind of change, how can you, like within companies, how can you make sure that there's people that you can trust, that you can talk to? Can you talk to experts by experience in your own company when you're dealing with panic attacks or depression? And we went to psychology students. And every time that we had a session, we've been doing this for 2 years. Every time that we had a session, there would be like 20 to 25 people waiting, tears in their eyes. My mom, my dad, my friend, my daughter, my son. Me too, me too, me too. Everybody has a story. If it's 48%, that means actually also the half of you has been dealing with something or has somebody that's very close to you. And a few weeks ago, I was speaking at Mentrum. I was speaking with 20 young people that had dealt with psychosis. And when I walked in the room, the lights were out. Nobody would look at me. You could see that they weren't there. And we watched the documentary. We started to talk. I talked about my experience. And after an hour, the lights were on. And you know what I saw? I saw hope. And with all the work that you need to do when you've dealt with something traumatizing or when you're dealing with a mental variation, with all the work that you need to do, and there's great, help and amazing things that you need to do, but you need a foundation of hope. You need to have self-assurance to be able to do the work. And the psychiatrist called me and he said, we have a program of 7 months, but what you did in 1 hour, we can't do it. Because that's something that experts by experience can do. My brother, he's talking He's touring through the country. He's okay now. He has a job. He's doing actually very well. And he's using his pain to help others, which is helping him heal. And there's places in Holland, and we know, I mean, you know, recovery colleges. There's places in Holland that are run by experts by experience. You don't need to wait 8 months. You can go there tomorrow, and you can talk to people, and those are amazing. So I want to challenge you, and I want to invite you, and I want to ask you to work together with all these amazing initiatives that are run by experts by experience, but also to be vulnerable about your own experience, to share your own experience. Because if there's hope, then it helps us to actually do the work that we need to do. And that's what I want this girl. That's what I wanted this girl to hear. I wanted her to know that she's absolutely okay the way she is. That there's amazing people that have gone through what she's gone through that want to walk next to her and help her. And that there's a system that is working on her side for her to heal. And lastly, I want her to have hope. I want us to focus on the strength of people with a mental variation, not just the weakness. If you want to see the documentaries, they're for free at Synergy. We're here today as well. We're showing the documentaries. And I would love to just talk to you about this, because I really think that we need more hopeful stories. We're working on new stories about eating disorders, about men and mental health, about all the big topics that you're dealing with, that you're working on these coming days. So let's do that together. Thank you so much.
I wait for my little PowerPoint. Thank you, Hanna. And I was thinking about a saying that the opposite of addiction is connection. And I think we're all here to tell a same story with different backgrounds. Mine is addiction. Hello, good morning. I learned it by heart, but this is not my core business, so in the last minute I decided to read it from my paper. Let me start by saying that I'm very honored to be here today. And second, I'd like to thank Madelon Zinnige for inviting me and believing in me. Let me take you back to 1987. I have to do it myself, I guess. Yes, that's me. 16 years old. On the outside, it seemed that I was doing okay. I was an A student, I was good at sports, I was popular among friends, I came from a good family. But inside, I was dead. I hated the girl you see on the second picture. She was shy, a little bit chubby, and most of all, very lonely. This is the moment where I left her when she needed me the most. And it took me a long, long time to make peace with her. This picture symbolizes that for me. I felt like everybody around me had some kind of user manual for life, except me. When I was 18, I smoked my first joint. And by the time I was 20, I used every kind of substance I could get my hands on. And they all offered me some kind of solution. They made me relax, flirty, smart. I could talk to people. They made me lose weight. Some of them gave me a warm blanket. And for the first time in my life, I felt that I was in control of my life. I had found the solution to my living problem. And to be honest, the first 2 years were great. I believed in my solution. But of course, after 2 years, my solution started to be the problem. Addiction took everything from me. It took my chance of career, education, maybe a loving relationship, maybe marriage, children. It took everything from me. And by the time I was 24, that's the third picture. This picture is taken on the day I was brought in the first rehab center, suffering from heroin addiction and user of methadone. From that moment on, till the age of 34, my life was about going in and out of rehab, sometimes staying clean for a while, but never for long, because I didn't know how to live life without what I thought was my solution, and I relapsed over and over again. At the age of 34, I was in a pretty bad shape. And my parents thought that it was maybe a good idea if I had something to take care of to make my life worth living. And they gave me this little puppy dog to take care of. But in reality, I was so weakened that I could not take care of this puppy dog. But something deep inside me really wanted to. And I decided to go to rehab one more time. It was all or nothing, life or death. During this rehab period, another thing happened. I met the first counselor with lived experience. And I knew I could not bullshit this guy or manipulate him with my sad stories, how tough life was. He could see right through me because he had been there too. On the other hand, this guy was my beacon of hope, my glow in the dark. If he could do it, maybe so could I. After a year of rehab, I went to a safe house, and a third event happened. My dentist at the time offered me a job for 4 hours a week as his dental assistant. I got my diploma, and I worked as a dental assistant for the upcoming 15 years. I wasn't really a very talented dental assistant, and I also didn't really like it. But I thought, for a long time, I thought that was the only thing I could do. And I also was maybe a little afraid to live life. You know, life has so many challenges. But after 15 years, I felt strong enough to do something else with my life. And maybe to do something with my lived experience that would be more meaningful. And so I did. I sold my car, I paid for my education, I went back to the school. You see me graduating, that was 2 years ago. And I hoped that I would find a job soon. But in a way, I really felt that this was the way I needed to go. Today, I'm sitting here as a coordinator of a recovery college in a little town called Schiedam, together with my colleague Arco. And now I'm going to read, because this is very important to me. I love my work. I love what I can bring to people. I love that my experience can benefit others, but that the experience of others can benefit others. And so we grow and heal together. We see recovery miracles happen every day. And unfortunately, the number of people needing mental health care is growing. Waiting lists are long, but never at a recovery college. Who would have thought that a 34-year-old heroin addict with nothing to show for would stand here today? Not me. but it shows that recovery is possible. I like to end with 2 quotes, which are very important to me. The first one, on the right, I found that recovery means being honest about what I want, what I need, what I feel, who I am. And for a long time, I want to fit in society, but it never worked. I needed to stay, how you say this? True to myself. The second quote, if we replace I with we, even illness becomes wellness. I hope that being here together and listening and learning from each other with a little bit of knowledge, but mostly to be open-minded, teachable, and listening with our hearts, we can turn illness into wellness. Thank you.
How do you follow that? Welcome, everyone. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I want to share with you a story that is deeply personal and transformative. It's a story that speaks to the core of inclusion and leadership, but also intersectionality. And it begins with a pivotal moment in my life. If we fast forward to when I was 27, working in a nightclub in Birmingham, England. One night, I saw a young woman in danger of being raped. And without thinking, I intervened to protect her. That act of courage resulted in me being stabbed 26 times. It was a moment that changed my life forever. The immediate pain and long-term consequences transitioned me from living with an invisible disability to navigating a life in a wheelchair as a wheelchair user. I also had to come to terms with post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental health challenges. The wheelchair and my mental health became a symbol of both limitation and newfound strength, and a constant reminder of what I call fortitude. This experience taught me about the profound intersection of our identities. And intersectionality is not just a concept, it's a lived reality for me. Each of us carry multiple identities: race, gender, disability, sexual orientation, and more, that intersect and shape our experience in unique ways. Understanding this is crucial for true inclusion and effective leadership. As I navigated my new reality, I realized that the revolution begins when you embrace our full self. Refusing to be divided by the system that seeks to marginalize us, we must strive to live meaningful lives, shifting the power and ensuring that every voice is heard. This requires what I call flipping the script on what we mean by terms like partnership, co-production, and policy making. But at the heart of this is a shift in a principle which belongs to the South African philosophy of Ubuntu. I am because we are. And this African philosophy emphasizes our interconnectedness and the belief that our individual well-being is intrinsically linked to the well-being of others. And for me, Ubuntu reminds us that our humanity is tied to the humanity of those around us. So let's talk about flipping this script. It means challenging the status quo, redefining leadership. And for me, leadership is not about titles or positions. It's about the action and impact you make. True leaders are those who inspire change by being authentic, inclusive, and compassionate. They understand that leadership is a journey of continuous learning and growth. Inclusion is not, and I mean not, a tick box exercise. It's fundamentally a principle that must be underpinned by everything we do. It means creating environments where everyone feels valued, respected, and uplifted to contribute. It requires us to listen actively and empathically to the diverse perspectives that recognizes that every voice matters. My story of intervening to protect a young woman and the following challenges I have faced is not just about personal courage, it's about collective responsibility. We all have a role to play in creating a more inclusive and equitable world. This starts with recognizing that there are systematic barriers that exist, and working together, we can dismantle them. And the principle for me of Ubuntu is critical to this process, which means I am because we are. Partnerships, co-production, and policy making must be rooted in the understanding that our fates are intertwined. And when we embrace Ubuntu, we move from a mindset of individualism to one of collective responsibility. This means engaging with communities, listening to our needs, and involving us in the decision-making process. It's about moving from a top-down approach to a collective, inclusive one. One of the most powerful lessons I have learned is the importance of what my colleagues beside me have said, hope-based compassion. In the face of adversity, hope can be the most powerful catalyst for change. It's about believing in the possibility of a better future and taking action to make it a reality. Compassion, on the other hand, is about understanding and empathizing with experience of others. When we continue and combine hope with compassion, we create a powerful force for positive change. As I conclude, I want to leave you with what I call this call to action. I want you to reflect on what resonates with you as you've listened to the stories and experience shared today. Think about how you can contribute to flipping the script in your own spheres of influence. How can you be more inclusive leader? Or how can you advocate for intersectionality in your communities and organisations? And how can you foster that hope-based compassion in an everyday interaction? The journey towards inclusion and leadership and intersectionality is ongoing. It requires us to be intentional, persistent, and courageous. But together, we can create a world where everyone is valued, uplifted to live meaningful lives. And do remember the principle of Ubuntu, I am, because we are. So let's us leave here today with a renewed sense of purpose and shared commitment to action. Embrace your full selves, challenge the status quo, and lead with authenticity and compassion. And remember, our strength lies in our unity. And together we can flip the script and forge a future where inclusion, intersectionality, and leadership are not just ideas, but a lived reality. So I say to you, rise up, take action, and be the change you wish to see. Because we are stronger together, and together we are unstoppable. Thank you. Let's make history.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And in good time also. So,
Wonderful stories.
if this is an example of how these 2 days are to be, I think we're in for a lot of good stuff. Thank you very much.
Yes, yes. Hartstikke goed gedaan.
So now, as you heard in the speeches, you are all leaders. Leaders in your own field, leaders in your own life, leaders in your own community. And just to get to know one another, please take the next 10 minutes to introduce yourself to the other leaders at or near your table. Say a bit about what you do and share what inspired you in the presentations we just heard. So 10 minutes, talk amongst yourselves as the leaders that you are.